Hi guys! Happy New Year! I hope the festive period was a good one for you and that you are recovering now. You may be able to tell from my voice that I've had the flu for several weeks. If I lose my voice halfway through, I'll have to revert to sign language. We'll see how I do with that. So, as you may have noticed, our internet went down mid-November, so all of my carefully laid plans of being able to have festive content and stuff going on through December all crashed and burned. But it's all online now again, which is good. It's been horrible trying to research without the internet. I've used up a lot of mobile data. So it did give me a chance to think about the kind of thing I wanted to do for the channel in 2019. I enjoy doing the weekly catch-ups. I get quite a lot out of that because in some ways it makes me more accountable for my time, but I also look back on the week and go, oh right, I did do quite a bit, instead of, oh no, I did nothing. So I'm going to keep on with those, but each video I do, I'll have a little element of the catching up and what I've done in the week at the start of it, and then for the rest of the video I want to talk about writing. With that in mind, if there's anything you would like me to cover, do please let me know in the comments underneath the video. You may also have noticed that I've got a new intro and outro. My other half, Neil, and I decided we were going to try out some stop motion animation over Christmas, and we put those together. So enormous thanks to him for that. So I think the last time I did a video was mid-December, so it was about a month ago. As I said, I've had flu for most of that month, in fact. My other half has had it quite badly as well, so we've been sort of a plague house, which has given us the chance to catch up on a lot of reading, which is quite nice. I read a brilliant book over Christmas called The Occult, Witchcraft and Magic, An Illustrated History by Christopher Dell. I very much recommend that if you're doing anything to do with magic and fantasy, or even just history, where you're in a period of history where laws against magic are a big thing. It has an impact on politics and on history and even the geography of an area. It's not what I would call in-depth on any particular subject, but it gives you an amazing overview of magic throughout time and how it's developed and how our thinking about different branches of magic has developed and so on and so forth. It's really good. The illustrations are lush and quite frankly hilarious in some cases, depending on what the artist was smoking at the time, I think is probably the best description. I've changed the way I'm approaching my work this year. I do this every January because usually by December I'm a bit burnt out from all of the projects during the year. So this year, last year I was working on several projects per week. This year I'm going to be working on one project for the month, allowing myself time each week to do work on the prompts. I'm looking to maybe start writing some more murder mystery plays as well, so I'm going to put in a bit of time to do those. And on top of that I've got my editing work for Coleman Editing, so quite a lot to fit in, but I think I get bored if I'm not busy. I think that's the problem, and then I get too busy. But time balance is always a thing that you end up trying new ways to work out, and maybe some ways work and some ways don't. So I've done this in the past where I work on one project a month, and it worked for about a year and then it stopped working and then I changed it. So hopefully this will get me through 2019 and I'll get some projects done. One of my ongoing projects that I haven't talked about very much actually is I'm helping a fellow author, a poet, Ray Bailey, put together an anthology which I should be working on this month and next month as well, so I might be able to tell you a bit more about that as it comes up. So this month's project that I'm working on is Secrets and Lies. I'm hoping I will get this one done this month and I'll get on to the next one, which is called Song of the Sharks. A couple of people have asked me about the thriller series I keep referring to. Secrets and Lies and Song of the Sharks, they're all part of that same thing, and what I'm intending to do is I'm going to write the whole series and then I'm going to go back and make sure it all works together as one thing, and then I'm going to release them one by one. So I'll probably be writing this for years and no one will see any of it, which is an interesting way of working, but in my head that's the way I wanted to do it. So I might change my mind halfway through and go, no, here, have some books. The one I'm working on at the moment, team are dealing with a serial killer. They usually are. I mean, that's one of the things that I've geared the series towards. So yeah, they've got to the point where they've done They've done a lot of investigating. They've got to the point where they're collating information. So it's essentially, it's the bit that you get just before they get the big push to find them. If you were watching it on TV, this would be a team debrief. And it got me thinking about how often in thrillers you can tell a writer has gone, I'll just make some stuff up for where they've been in the past as I go. And they've not gone back and checked it. And it's one of the things that as a reader I spot, and I'm like, but you said he was here at this time, but he can't have been here at this time because it was underwater. Like, there was someone who said that they were in a particular street in New Orleans, and they talked specifically about this street. And it was the year of the big flood, and the street was, all of the houses on the street were wiped out for the entirety of the time the person was supposed to be there. And it just felt really weird that they just forgot to look for that one thing. And sometimes it's details like that that really irritate a reader or really really sell it to a reader. So I thought I'd run through an example, since I'm at that part of my story anyway, of how I approach collating data for a serial killer in fiction. So you pick a town, the town that your murder mystery is happening in. So you've had several murders, you've had various people going missing. The first thing you need to know is, when did your serial killer come to town? Were they born here? Or did they move here? Did they come here because of work? Were they running from something? Are they transient? Are they moving through? Is this part of a route that they travel all of the time? Let's call the serial killer Mr. X. So let me give you a brief introduction to Mr. X. He's African American. He is about 40 years old. He works maintenance and labouring jobs. He's polite to people, but people don't get a good vibe from him. He has a sister a few years younger than him, and who is his unwilling accomplice. He's ex-military, but he was dishonourably discharged. So I know he moves around a lot. He has about a 4-year cycle, and every 4 years, when he starts killing, they move to a new place. I know he's been killing since his mid-20s. Currently they live in Peachtree City in Georgia, and the story is set in 2008. He presently works for a maintenance company working on the golf courses, because Peachtree City has loads of golf courses. One of the things I had the team find in the house was a comic from 1979. Part of the psychology of it hinges on an event that happened in their childhood. So I know from the date on that comic, either Mr. X or the sister was a child or a very young teenager in 1979. So the first thing I do is I write out the cycle, which is 4 years, so 2008, 2004, 2000, 1996. I don't want to go too much further back than that, because I thought that might be around when they were going to get started. And then at the bottom of the page, I write out the stuff I know about their childhood. So eventually it's going to meet in the middle. I put the year the comic was written, and I decided quite arbitrarily that the serial killer was 10 at that point, and Mr. X was 10, which puts the year they were born in 1969, which makes them 39, so 40-ish still works for the character. Now in the US, in the 80s, you can join, I think as you can today, you could join the military at 17, because you do all your training before you ship off at 18. So I had him join the Air Force in 1987 and served until 1992. This was when he was dishonourably discharged. Their father was still living, and the sister was living with him, but the mother had died when they were much younger, when they were children. So I put the father's death just after the dishonourable discharge, because the thing about serial killers is generally something triggers them. So I wanted the dishonourable discharge and the father's death to be the major trigger, because suddenly he's back home, he's got to care for this sister that he thinks is a burden on him, his father passes away, everything in his life is changing. This is what drives him over the edge. Because I know when he served, I can look up on Wikipedia where the US military was active during those years, and I can pick out a few places that I want him to be in case I need it for detail later. So that sort of meets up with the top half of my chart, where I've got the cycle going back. 1992 is a good point to start that cycle. And I know where they've started out is not where they've ended up. So I bring up Google Maps and I have a hunt for towns with names I like. And then I have a look at the town and I see if it's the kind of place I can see them living, if that makes any sense. So I picked out completely at random Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I decided that they were born and raised just outside that in Petal. For the purposes of the story, it needed to be an urban centre, but near to a forested area, because that's where the Mr. X disposes of his corpses. It's always in a forested area. There was one nearby, the DeSoto National Forest. So I had a look on the Wikipedia page for Hattiesburg, and they have a zoo, and I thought, well, we'll start off there. He's straight out of the Air Force. He's got a job with the zoo as a maintenance on the grounds kind of thing. If that's the point where he's committed this murder and then he starts to move on, we know he's left there in 1992, and then by 1996 he's going to be somewhere else. So I picked out Winfield in Louisiana. Again, I was looking for somewhere that was not a huge urban centre, but not a really small one either. It's just on the edge of the Kitashi National Forest. I decided to give him 2 different jobs there. Later, he has his sister stalk the victims, so I needed a point for him to decide that that was a good idea. So I had him as a school janitor until he was dismissed for various creepiness that I've not yet plotted out entirely, but he will have been dismissed from that. And then he picked up work at the lumber mill, again, thanks to Wikipedia. They leave Winfield in 1996 and go to Florence, South Carolina. I had Mr. X down as working at Intercity Rail there, because you get a lot of work on the railways, particularly when they're expanding, and they were in the 90s. Just outside Florence, there is the Lynches River Country Park for disposal of the bodies. So they stayed in Florence for another 4 years. I had them move on again to Alabama, this time to Oxford, where they had 2 different places they could leave their bodies. There's the Mountain Longleaf National Wildlife Reserve and the Talladega National Forest, and there's the Anniston Army Depot just outside the National Forest. So I thought, I'll put him as working there. He's using fake ID by this point, so the fact that he was dishonourably discharged won't impact on that. But you can sort of see, as he goes through, a desire to get back into serving his country in some way. So they kill there in 2004, and then they're in Peachtree City. And all of that information gives you little details that you can use to build on. So maybe when they're searching the house, they find a fridge magnet from Florence. Or there's photographs of them by a particular lake in the Kitashi National Forest. Maybe there's a bookmark in the sister's room from Petal, Hattiesburg or something. Maybe the yearbook is there from Hattiesburg. Maybe there's a shopping bag from Oxford, Alabama. You can put all of these details in. Essentially what you've given yourself is a framework that you can refer back to. And all of it gives colour to the narrative, and it makes the Mr. X more believable as a character. It makes them seem more real. And it also means that if you take a break for a couple of weeks and you come back and go, when were they in the army? I don't remember. When did this happen to them? You've got it all down as a record. So that was my quick guide to plotting a serial killer's movements over time for crime thrillers. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do any more on this subject, or if you want me to talk about something else. As ever, if you want to see any more videos like this, subscribe. If you want to support me on my Patreon channel, there is a link in the description. So I hope you've had a good 2019 so far. I hope you're not working too hard and the writing treats you well. See you next week!